The Aldis podcast is brought to you by Aldis International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Tom Vladeck. Tom is the co-founder and CEO at Recast. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, JP. It's great to be on.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you here. Tom, let's start with yourself, please, as we do with all of our guests. Could you give us an overview of your background in tech and what your journey has been from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and what's led you to where you are today as the co-founder and CEO at Recast?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I dive into that, I just want to make one quick editorial. I'm co-CEO along with my co-founder. So Michael Kaminsky shares the title with me. But yeah, so my background in tech has been as an entrepreneur exclusively. So I graduated college in 2008. I was a math major. I journeyed through the wilderness for a number of years, doing mostly stuff related to climate change. And then in 2014, I sold out, went to business school in Philadelphia, and it was there that my career started to pivot towards tech. When you do an MBA, between your first and second years, you do an internship. I literally bombed every single tech interview that I did. The way that I comfort myself is that I was coming back from a trip to Japan and I was on 12 hours of time difference, but I think it was also just me. But my friend got me an internship at Venmo. And it was at Venmo that I really started to work at the intersection of marketing and statistics. And I just loved that intersection. It was something that allowed me to really get back to my roots in math. Before business school, I didn't realize how much math and statistics was in marketing. And from then on, it was off to the races. I started a company my second year called Gradient Metrics, which does mainly survey-based market research. And over the years, that's become a small consulting firm that still operates, although I'm not involved in the day-to-day any longer. But because of that, through that experience, I met my co-founder, Michael Kaminsky, who at the time was the head of data at Harry's. And it just so happened that we were seeing the same problem from different perspectives. So he was at Harry's as they were making a transition into retail, so into Target and Walmart, and their marketing attribution was breaking because of that. And in my experience at Gradient, a lot of my clients would say, hey, we're spending all this money on advertising. We don't know it's working. Can you help us sort it out? And that's actually the same problem, right? And we sort of realized that after he left Harry's, and then we started working on Recast, which I'll tell you all about. And for a long time, it was a nights and weekends project from, say, 2018 to 2021. But in 2021, we felt like things were really clicking. The technology that we had built was working. And we raised a seed fund at a pre-seed round at that point. And then it's been a pretty traditional startup journey from there. We raised another round of proper seed funding from Lair Hippo a little bit more than a year ago. And now we're a team of almost 30.
I want to spend a bit more time talking about Recast as a business. Can you set the stage for what the goal and the mission of the business is, and then help further define what problem you're solving within the space?
So the core mission is to help marketing teams spend their money more wisely and to grow their business more prudently or grow it more successfully, really. So the problem that Recast solves is one that goes back to the 1950s or 1960s, which is, there's actually a famous quote from even earlier, which is, I know that half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half, right? Recast's goal is to help you figure out which half is wasted and which half is working, and to spend more of your dollars on what is working. The kind of problem or class of companies or models that we sit in is called media mix modeling or marketing mix modeling, which is where you take the data that describes what you've done out in the market. How much did I spend on Facebook? How much did I spend on TV? So on and so forth. And then you build a statistical model that relates your Facebook spend to your outcome. That's been around since the 50s and 60s, but we do that, we think, a whole lot better than has ever been possible before. And that's just the start, because really what we offer to our clients is the ability to accurately forecast, powerfully optimize, and track their performance. And that's really what they care about. They care about, oh, I can predict with high accuracy how my business will perform in Q4. Or I can use this optimization tool to figure out how to hit the $75 CPA while getting the maximum number of conversions possible. They don't necessarily care about why it works under the hood. They care that is possible. But of course, we care a lot that the model itself is really powerful.
Of course, of course. And what happens under the hood is obviously in no small part to your talented team and the tech that you've built. Without going too far down the rabbit hole or giving away any of your trade secrets, when you're speaking to your customers about the how, what do you tell them? What do you show them that gives them the confidence to spend with you and ultimately the results at the end of it? So when you're talking to people and you're explaining, look, this is what we can do for you and this is how, can you share some insight into the tech behind the scenes and what that journey has been like from launching the business to where you are now, almost 5 years later?
As I said, we're not the first people in this space. So there are a lot of legacy players that have been around for a while that offer these kinds of services. What we tell people is that we replace humans with computers. So how this was done in the past is that you'd have some model and some analyst or a team of analysts would have to make tons and tons of choices. The word that prospective customers or customers have told us is that people would do a pass. So we get a pass on the model, and then we'd find a bunch of things that we didn't like or that didn't make sense. We send it back and get another pass, and then we get another pass. And so this means that to build a media mix model historically would take months. Our model refreshes every week. So that's just a very clear difference in the speed and level of automation that we bring to the table that the legacy players can't bring. We can update every week because we don't have teams of consultants that need to make manual passes on the model each time it's built. So instead of having people do it, we have computers do it. And so essentially to update this model, we just have, I think, somewhere on the order of 100 servers running for anywhere between 4 and 10 hours each week to do all the calculations and simulations to build the model for each client's model. So that's really the core technology difference. It goes a lot deeper than that, but I'm not going to bore you and the audience getting into it, but that's at a high level how you can think of it. And then in terms of just the success metrics, like getting down to brass tacks, why is this model better? What we encourage our customers to do, and what we do very transparently with all of our clients, is to look at how well we forecast their business with data that we have not seen, because that's really where the rubber meets the road. Can we predict how well you'll do in Q4 or in Q1 of next year without yet knowing what your performance will be, but knowing what you'll spend? And we think, and we generally can, do that a lot better than the competition. And that's really what, it makes us different. And it means that you can rely a lot more on our recommendations.
And that gives you the confidence to go to market, having that historical evidence that you can get accurate predictions, which is obviously the name of the game in your business. I want to spend a bit more time just getting your insight on the launching of the business and the journey to where you are today. Everyone knows in the startup world, the first few years are most difficult because you're building the product, you're building the demo, you're trying to get it out to market while also hiring and retaining staff. So when you look at the last 5 years, as you guys come up to your 5-year anniversary, What are some of the standout moments for you, whether it be interaction with a first major client or some of the learns or wins you had along the way?
So our journey was a bit non-traditional. The sort of traditional enterprise SaaS or technology startup story, especially in the business case, is when co-founders go out, they have a deck, they raise a pre-seed round, and then they go get 5 clients to be design partners. With those design partners, they build the product and then get it to a point where they might start actually charging for it, in which case, at that point, they may raise another round or they reach another milestone. With Michael and myself, it looked nothing like that. It was much messier. So when we started Recast, he had just moved out of the country from New York to Mexico City. I was running a whole other company. He had other side projects as well. And we were doing this with this unbelievably naive misconception that it could be a side project. We just had no idea both the scale of the problem and the size of the market when we first got started. We thought that this could be like a very almost lightweight SaaS product that could run by itself, and we could make some extra money doing that. As we dug into it, though, we realized, oh, this is like if you were to design a challenging statistical problem in the lab, this might be it. It's just extremely difficult to do right. And then also that we thought that because it was a mature market, that everyone would be happy with their solution, except for some niche that we were targeting. And we realized that, no, that was actually completely wrong. Almost nobody's happy with their media measurement today. So this is a huge market. And so if you add those two things together, you look at a venture scale business. And it took us some time to realize that, but we started working on it well ahead of that. So we probably took almost a year of nights and weekends working on the model to get to a place where we could start to approach customers about paying us. Before that point, I had some relationships from Gradient. He had some relationships as well. We could piece together data sets to work against, to build the model with. But it wasn't until I think 2020 that we closed our first deal. And I will always remember it. They're a customer that's still with us. I just remember I was in New York, they were in New York, and I went to Balthazar Bakery and got a couple boxes of petit fours, which are my girlfriend's favorite treat. So I thought that they would like them too, and brought them in to close the deal, just literally bribing them with cookies. And it worked. They signed on. There's still a client today, which is great. So that's definitely a really memorable moment. I think the next key milestone for us was raising our pre-seed round and starting to hire people. We had a really easy time raising the first round of financing because Michael had a relationship with the CEO of Harry's. So they have a fund called Good Friends. Him and the founders of Warby Parker and Allbirds, they have a sort of a family office fund. And so they, on the relationship with Michael off the back of that, invested. And taking what had been a company of just 2 people, grinding essentially in the dark for years before anything saw the light of day, getting other people into the journey was a really special moment. That was when it went from something very fragile to something that became more like grounded and real than it had been before. And then beyond that, honestly, hasn't been a single defining moment since then, probably other than our last fundraise with Lair Hippo, because it's just been a series of incremental improvements every day and some really great hires that add a lot of character and capability to the team and just continuously doing that. So it's less been like, oh, this is when the curtain got pulled back and the company got revealed, and much more like sticking another crampon into the ice and going up the mountain one step at a time is how it's felt.
Such a great analogy for the startup journey. I really like it.
You are listening to the Aldous Podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.aldous.com.
But you've been incredibly successful, and there's a real demand and need for what you're building, which leads nicely then into the looking ahead piece. You've taken us up to where you are today as a business. I want to get your take on the next chapter, particularly looking at the next 18 to 24 months, twofold on growing of the customer base, how that's going to impact the need to grow the overall business, but then the ever shifting landscape of technology with all of the changes within AI. So let's start there. As co-founder and co-CEO, what conversations are you guys having, or what do you expect to need to do to stay on the cutting edge of this tech? Where are you seeing the most opportunities to utilize AI within the existing product? And then how is that going to have an impact then to your team and the talent that you need to maintain and add?
Great question. And it's something I actually was working on earlier today as it happened. AI is obviously, I think I am human. And so I, like everyone else, has just been completely blown away by how fast it's been progressing and what it can do. And even the difference a few months makes in terms of ChatGPT's capabilities, for example. That being said, LLMs, diffusion models, the current state of the art in terms of AI is not well suited to the specific statistical modeling problem that we have today, because the kind of data that we get from our customers is just simply too small. So on average, we're getting daily data covering a couple of years. So that's, call it 800 rows by 30 columns. The data regime that this data set operates on relative to a large language model is just, they're in completely different ends of the spectrum. So I'm not at the moment that concerned that AI will be disruptive to our core statistical model, but I believe that it's possible that will change rapidly. And so it's something I keep my eye on to make sure that if it turns out that one day anyone will be able to build there in a couple written instructions to ChatGPT, I want to make sure that I'm staying on top of that. I believe that will be tough to do for a couple of reasons. Number one, just the fact that the modeling and data regime are on very different ends of the spectrum. How you train those models versus, and the amount of data it requires to train those models versus the data regime that we're in. But again, that may change, and I'm staying on top of it because it is something that I think any prudent CEO should be looking at. But what I'm excited about, what I'm super excited about, is interface design and the ability to train GPTs to handle some of the services that go along with the product. So what I mean by that is I've been uploading all of our service documentation or technical documentation, any documentation I can get my hands on for the company, into a custom GPT. And I've just been asking it questions. How does Recast model work? How does Recast handle holidays? What data does Recast require? And seeing the quality of the answers that I get back. And I think that possibly will give us a lot of interesting use cases, both internally and externally, to interact with the Recast model. And where it gets really interesting is when you can start to hook up APIs to the GPTs, right? So you could describe in natural language what you're looking to accomplish. Hey, Recast, I want to forecast for the next 90 days under business as usual assumptions. And we have the technology to run that. And if ChatGPT has the ability to string together the right API calls in order to hit our backends to deliver that, there's no reason that's not possible. In fact, I don't think there's any reason to believe it's not possible today. And so that allows a lot of interfaces that I think are really compelling with the backend that just remain to be built, right? So I'm really interested in enterprise apps that work that way, or you provide ChatGPT with the APIs and descriptive names and what they mean, and then your customers can interact with them in a very fluid and conversational way, in the way that everyone seems to love with chatbots. And I think it's a really powerful way to interact with these apps. So that's something that I'm really excited about.
One of the things you touched on earlier, which I'm keen to get your perspective on again, was the process of going from a two-person founded startup to adding talent and encouraging people to join you on this journey. I'm intrigued to learn how you approach those conversations in the early days and if it's evolved at all as the business has become more successful. When you think of 2024 and the growth in store, I'm sure there's going to be a need to continue to add to your already talented team. So when you're speaking to people about Recast, when you've spoken to people in the past and you've encouraged them to join you guys over some of the other great companies hiring, what are some of the things that you say to candidates that get them bought into you and Recast over some of the other great companies out there?
That's a great question. And so, as I'm sure you can imagine, how we talk to candidates about Recast has really changed over the years from when it was a 2-person company to now a 30-person company. At the beginning, it's very much a personal pitch, almost like a begging somebody to join. But now it's much more centered around what we've already accomplished, what we're likely to continue accomplishing, and what that trajectory means in terms of becoming like an independent and very large business. It definitely depends on the role. We are very active users of some very deep technology. You're probably not familiar, and much of your audience probably won't be either, but in the Bayesian computing world, which has also seen its own mini revolution over the past few years, there's a couple modeling frameworks that are dominant. So there's PyMC, there's Stan, there's Turing and Julia, and a couple others. And we're really active users of Stan. We have a couple of the core developers on our team. And for that reason, we've become pretty well known in the sort of Bayesian statistical computing world. And so for people in that world, when we're recruiting there, the pitch is a lot more around the kinds of problems that you'll be able to work on, what we've already accomplished, the kinds of colleagues that you'll have, and just really the sort of like cornucopia of interesting technical things to sink your teeth into. For the other folks that are working in the sort of more customer facing roles or the ops roles or the sales roles, the pitch is really about how Recast has grown and is likely to continue growing, and the quality of the people that are already on the team, right? We're a remote team, which gives people a certain set of trade-offs in terms of the kind of company dynamic and quality of life. And so that's an attractive pitch to some people. It's not as attractive to others, but for whom it's attractive, I think we offer a really compelling proposition to them. And we've just assembled, I think, a best-in-class team and a best-in-class set of colleagues. And we work on really hard problems, and we save our customers on the order of millions of dollars at a time. And that's a chance to have a really big impact. And it's a chance to grow really fast with a company that's growing really fast. And so that's the kind of value proposition that we offer to those sorts of folks. Depending on the role, that's the conversation that we'll have.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. I really appreciate your time. Great to learn about your own background and the formation of Recast. Quite an interesting space, one that we're familiar with here on the podcast. And it sounds like you guys are having a lot of success. And there's always going to be an increased demand for advantageous tech to help companies get more from their dollar. So it's an exciting space to be in with a lot of tech advancements. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at Recast the best of luck in the months and years to come. And we look forward to having you back on the show.
Appreciate it. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the All This Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.allthis.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.